I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think this is our fourth or fifth Zoom call in our Full Circle series. So Stuart and I, for those of you who don't know, co-founded Thousand Fell, and our mission with Thousand Fell is to end landfill waste in retail and to champion the circular economy. And so to do that, we've really relied on experts like Stacy and Carrie, and just this awesome network of people that have really banded together to move the industry forward. And we thought, what better way to kind of teach our community about our passion than start a series like Full Circle. So we're really excited to have both Stacy and Carrie here today to talk to us about kind of the next step in the process, which is communications and branding. And something, just a quick anecdote for Stuart and I, when we started Thousand Fell 2 years ago, before we even had a name, I don't think we anticipated just how nuanced trying to talk about something as complicated as circularity, the circular economy, sustainability, recycling was really going to be. And so really excited to dive into that today. And the way that we'll set it up is we'll start with a couple of questions that we came up with for Stacy and Carrie, and then we'll open it up to audience questions.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Great.
So first, Stacy and Carrie are just going to pass the mic to you both. Maybe we'll start with, I'm just looking in order on my screen, start with Stacy. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about you, your background, your career, and Evrnu.
Sure, yeah. So I started Evrnu back in, 2014. I went on a trip to China in 2010. I was working in Seattle for a company making clothes out of recycled plastic waste. And they sent me to China to find sources of manufacturing. And I'd been to China many times before this trip. I've worked for DuPont, started Target's raw materials division. Eddie Bauer moved me to the West Coast where I managed their denim businesses. But I'd never been into the subcontracted areas of China until 2010. I went into these areas and didn't realize how damaging our industry was to the environment and the way people were living as a result of that. And decided that I wanted to try to do something about it with the rest of my career. So I ended up going back to grad school. I got an MBA in sustainable systems, and I began studying the problem. What I discovered in grad school was 90% of all clothing in the world is made out of two fibers, polyester and cotton. Then we put all of this value into our clothing, and we throw away over 50 million tons of clothing waste away every year. So we knew then that if there was a way to take that waste, turn it into new raw material, fiber, it was the linchpin of impact for the system. And that is what we do at Evrnu now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to dive more into Evrnu. And then
Thank
Carrie,
you.
could you give us a brief history or bio?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kerry Phillips. I'm one of the founding partners of BPCM, which is a communications firm. We have offices in New York, Los Angeles, and a partner agency in London called Modus BPCM. We have traditionally been a consumer goods luxury PR firm. What that means is that for 20 plus years, we've worked in the fashion industry, the beauty industry, the travel industry, and in wine and spirits. And we have been very good at selling people things, expensive things, beautiful things, luxury things. We have clients like Hermes and Longchamp and lots of other ones. What we do, what we have shifted into is we are one of the only agencies who has a practice in sustainability that goes across all of those divisions. And that started similarly to Stacy, who I will tell you is a very old friend of mine. Prior to that, we had, 2014 was the first time somebody said sustainability to me and I didn't know what it meant. And I'm a very curious person. And so I started digging in similarly to the way Stacy did about the industry that I'd worked in for so long and the kind of waste that it creates and the kind of suffering it creates both for humans and the planet. And I thought there's got to be a way to do this better. And I also kept thinking, nobody knows. No, people don't understand. If people understood, they would make better choices. And so as a communications professional, that's been kind of one of my guiding principles over the last 5-6 years since we started working in sustainability, has been to educate. So along with this being a part of our company, I do a lot of speaking and writing and talking to people about this topic because it's really, really what I love to do. So I'm so happy that Chloe and Stuart invited us to come and do this together.
That was fantastic. Kind of using that as a springboard, it sounds like both of you really got deeper into the sustainability movement within the past 5 to 10 years. Can you tell me a little bit about how sustainability in fashion and retail and textiles has changed in that time? It seems like Chloe and I talk about this all the time, that like 2 years ago was like such a drastic change. I can only imagine sort of what that arc has looked like over the past 5 to 10 years.
Well, you guys are lucky because now people will know what the word means. I mean, Flynn, you can take this, but I'm sure when you got an MBA in sustainable systems, people were like, you got a what? You know, it's over the last 2 years in the fashion industry, you know, you almost can't go a day the last year without seeing something about sustainability, at least with the word sustainability in it. When I first got into this, there was I had to go and try to research what it meant, and I had to dig deep. I had to talk to professors and go to the UN and do things that you don't have to do anymore. That the information is available in a way now that it really wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. About 15 years ago, I started understanding what sustainable materials were working at Target. Target was influenced by some of the work that Walmart was doing around their waste recovery, and sustainable development from a corporate perspective was a cost reduction strategy, and I think that was kind of where it got its roots. And you probably know, if you follow the sustainability in apparel, it was Yvon Chouinard who had a conversation with the CEO of Walmart and influenced Walmart to take sustainability seriously. So Walmart got on board, and then Target got on board as well right around that time. So I was at Target at that time. And, it's evolved. It wasn't until 2010 when I started working in materials reuse professionally that I started to get excited about what could be done with waste. Prior to that, you could buy recycled PET and polar fleece and other kinds of not in kind of technical fabrics. I wanted to know, can I make a men's 100 doubles dress shirt out of waste, and would a man even know the difference? And I had a lot of luck and started to get really excited about that. And I was not only able to create really fine materials, but we were able to take them back down to the polymer and rebuild them. So that's when I started to get really excited about waste. But to Carrie's point, no one was talking about it. And, even if the apparel or fashion industry had an appreciation for sustainable systems, they had no language and no basis of understanding what people were even talking about back then.
And let's be clear, I think there's still a lot of confusion, and that is inherent to the word sustainability, which means capable of being sustained. It's literally the Webster's definition of it. So the problem that comes from the word is that it's fuzzy, and it means something different to everybody. And a lot gets lumped in, right? Our materials get lumped in, circularity gets lumped in, ethical supply chain gets lumped in, traceability gets lumped in. So it's very interesting because people can say that they're interested in sustainability, but you really do have to dig deeper. And I think, we do a lot of work at the corporate level at BPCM, and the first thing we always have to do is education. It's like 100% of the time, because everybody has a different idea of what it means. And so we have to educate everybody and then get them on the same page about how they're going to tackle all those different pieces of what makes up that kind of ecosystem.
100%. We have absolutely seen the word sustainability become muddled. And we're going to circle back to that in a second, actually, Carrie, because I want to get deeper into that. But that was super interesting. And I wonder, just as a follow-up question to what you both just spoke about, have there been any major turning points with sustainability in fashion over the last 2 years? Have there been any larger macro events that have affected this? Or has it just kind of been this slow roll? Or is there anything that you've seen?
Well, over the last 4 weeks, I mean, we see brands and retailers canceling fall 2020, spring 2021's on the chopping block too. I mean, it's a mass exodus right now. And what are we going to do with all of those materials? That's the big question, and I think that makes, this topic incredibly relevant right now.
Yeah. I hadn't actually even thought yet about material waste from canceled orders.
Oof, yeah, 4 million tons a month.
Are you working on this?
I am always working on that.
Awesome. Well,
You can email me in the middle of the night and test me.
I will tonight.
I think one of the things that we've seen, and I don't know if it's macro, but it's certainly a trend, is, I think fashion's been a little, I think fashion and beauty, they're always looking at what their competition are doing, right? And they're always looking at who's taking market share, because we're so oversaturated in almost everything in the world. But I'm going to speak specifically about fashion and beauty. And so you find a lot of people looking at their competition and what are their competition doing, and what do they get? What are they owning that they get to talk about? And I think sustainability, like, we can really thank the brands who are early adopters, like a Levi's or Stella McCartney, who got to have this like loud megaphone, because once they educated editors and customers, they started getting a ton of credit for what they had been doing and they make it look cool and they make it look interesting, and they use a lot of technology, and that's kind of fun and spicy. And so I think then all of a sudden everybody was sort of like, well, I'm going to do is it okay if I just make an organic t-shirt and put it in my line? Oh, wait, that's not enough. Oh, okay. So that kind of caught fire in that way. And in the beauty world, I think clean beauty has, kind of taken the world by storm. And now you see giant CPG companies like L'Oreal Group and Unilever and places like that, and the brands that are doing the best for them are the ones that are implementing sustainable practices, and they get to market about it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So follow up with that. How do you both approach consumer-facing messaging that is sustainable or technical, or like with regards to recycling and waste management? And has there been any change recently or over the past few years in how you're communicating out to the consumer? Like, has consumer appetite shifted to be more technical or want more of an authority? And then what are some of the unique, just piggybacking on that, what are some of the unique challenges that you're facing when trying to convey something as complicated as circularity to a consumer base?
Yeah, you say the words molecular regeneration and people are like, you're what? You want a what? And so yeah, it is really technical when you break it down, and we need digestible ways to talk about, the art and science behind taking things from one form and converting them into something completely new and different. So it is a bit of a paradigm shift for consumers that are used to buying things and then either throwing them away or recycling them and not really knowing what happens to them. So we're moving into a world now where consumers can start buying things, donate them, and then know that they're going to be turned into their new things. How you talk about that is we're still working through that. We haven't gone to retail yet. From our perspective anyway, we thought it was really critical to build, as a B2B technology company, we're technology owners. and inventors of recyclable technologies. But we did create a consumer-facing co-brand called News Cycle, and News Cycle was specifically designed for that consumer shift. And right now, consumers throw away about 80% of all of their clothing directly into the garbage can. We want to go after that with News Cycle. When people see News Cycle on their garment, they should know that that garment was made from their old clothes and it's recyclable. So don't throw it away, donate it to anyone you would donate to. And we'll be working with everyone in the back end to make sure that those resources get turned back into new products.
I would say working on the consumer side, it's still education, but you really have to be clever about it, right? Because you don't want to feel didactic, and you don't want to, well, there's sort of two things happening. One of the things that happens is that there's a lot to unpack in terms of circularity, as Chloe and Stuart know so well. And so how do you do that in a way that's fun, that's illustrative, that feels cool, that feels like, that makes it feel like, well, why would you do anything other than send your shoes back? Or why would you do anything other than recycle your old clothes? Why would you ever think that this was something that went in the garbage? How ridiculous. And that's, we're getting there, but we're in early stages. But I think what's going to start happening and start coming out now is how much waste is left over after when your entire supply chain shuts down, right? China and Italy. Can you imagine? I mean, China and Italy. So everything shut down, and India.
Yep.
Everything shut down.
And the US.
And so there's nothing. That stuff is sitting there. And in a world driven by, in an industry driven by trends, you can't just say, oh, okay, well, we'll just produce that. When you guys get back up and running, we'll just keep producing those things and we'll put them out, as we get them, and it'll be fine. Like, the fashion would never. So there's going to be a huge call to attention of this. I think there's also going to be a huge call to the on-demand production model. And up until a few years ago, it wasn't super possible, but there's companies like Resonance, there's brands like Son of a Tailor who are actually doing that, and they're doing it in really interesting and exciting ways. So I think as these stories start to come to the forefront, we're going to see the wave moving in that way. But right now, it's still about education and making it seem cool and fun and young.
That's both really interesting. There's so many different paths that we could dive into here. I want to back up a little bit and talk about something that you both kind of mentioned, where sustainability, Carrie, is this catch-all for so much. It's not just the materials that you use. It's not just an organic shirt in your line. It's a lot more than that. How have you helped editorial and helped kind of the rest of sort of the communications industry dissect that and really pick apart that? And then how have you helped brands do that? And then maybe Stacy, to Evrnu, how do you guys really begin talking about that as well, where it's not just sustainability, it's a point that's much more nuanced than that, and hey, this isn't just us rallying around Earth Day once a year to sell you seemingly time relevant product, but it is kind of an ethos of the brand and the mission.
So I do it similarly but differently when I'm talking to an editorial audience, a consumer audience, or a brand. And within that editorial audience, it's about literally dissecting that for them. It's about giving them education, giving them good information that they can use, and good sources who are properly vetted that they can go to for vetting their stories. Because I think that's one of the things that we saw. I started doing editorial education about 2 years ago, and what we had seen is that there was just a lot of bad information out there. And so there's people like Maxine Badat from the New Standard Institute, who does such a good job at vetting factual information. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation does such a good job at around the circular economy. So there are great sources out there. And sometimes what happens is that bad facts spread faster than good ones. So I felt that at BPCM, it was our job to educate, because that relationship between editor and publicist is really a symbiotic one. And so it's our job, if we have good information, to make sure they have that. So we've been doing that. From a consumer standpoint, I feel like my whole job is empowerment, making them feel like they can make a difference. Sometimes it's really hard as a consumer when you don't have a lot of money to feel like, and all you can afford is H&M. And that's a totally reasonable position to be in. We've all been in that position. You know, we've all been in that position where you're like, I can spend $20 right now. I need something, I can spend $20. That's all I've got. I got to go try to make the best decision I can. And so sometimes that leaves you feeling a little bit powerless as a consumer.
Yeah.
But what I always say to people is that as consumers, you have a voice, right? You have social media, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, and brands look at that. Brands look at what you say to them. So empowering people to do that. And then from the corporate standpoint, what I usually do is I know that they will not be able to, in the short term, do everything. That's like unpacking all of that stuff from the suitcase. So I literally lay it out on the table and I say, okay, if this is who you are as a brand, what lane do you want to pick here? You know, what is your brand all about? Who are you at your core? And what do you believe in? And then let's pick a couple of things here and let's go for that. Because my philosophy is once they start to get some wins, winning makes you feel good, and doing things and getting credit for them makes you feel good. That's like true for my 5-year-olds, and that's true for corporate America, right?
It's
so
true
you
for
get
me.
credit for something. It's true for Stacy. That's how, you know, I like to tell her when she's doing a good job because it makes her do more. But so that's true of human beings, right? So if you can get, and then you can get them to activate on them in a way that gets them excited and that gets everybody at their company, we call it stakeholder engagement. That's the best way to then get them to focus on the next new thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
That's awesome. So it's different it's sort of a different strategy for consumers. It's a different strategy for brands. It's a different strategy for like corporations. That's like really relevant.
I think, Carrie, what we wanted to point out there, one of the most interesting things to Stuart and I when we first met you that we thought kind of everyone would like to hear is like, you're responsible over the past few years for going into a lot of these major magazines and newspapers and editorial groups and like helping to teach what is the circular economy. And then that has this trickle down effect where now we have things like Vogue's Business's Sustainability Edit weekly. And, but that really what Stuart and I have seen is even over the past 18 months, 24 months, there's this larger pedagogy or movement that's had to be kind of created or championed by people like yourself. And it's interesting to think about as a consumer that, you know, potentially even editors weren't aware of like the lexicon or what they should be describing or who they should even be looking to for fact checking. And so it's interesting that you've been a part of kind of creating this structure.
I find myself to be in a really incredibly fortunate position where I have super understanding business partners who saw me kind of go off in this direction and say, you guys, I think this is really important. And, you know, in those early days, it was a little bit prophet in the wilderness to 2014. And, you know, me and Stacy, and, you know, but they always said like, but bring back what you learn. And so I would bring back what I was learning. I would go to conferences. I would go to like, I would go to lectures, that I would do things online, and I would dig in, and I'd meet with companies who were doing stuff, but I'd always bring the information back. And then my business partner, Vanessa, had the good point and said, like, why isn't anybody writing about this the right way? She and I sit 4 feet across from each other in our offices and have for 20 years. And she would see me every morning get so frustrated when there was a sustainability story, because I get so excited because there's a story about sustainability, and then be so annoyed because I'd be just so depressed because the facts weren't there, or the expert they chose wasn't the real expert, or and she goes, you can just keep whining about it, or you can go do something about it. And so that's that's what prompted me to do that. Also because I love to share this information. It's so, if people have better information, we can move this thing along faster. Like, we've got 10 years, that's 3,000 days. We get to I always say, like, education is free. Like, I will talk to anybody about this. Like, I will do that conversation with, I jumped at it when you guys wanted to do this, because there's such good information to share. And that helps us move it along.
Exactly. Quickly, Stacy, I'd love to ask you something similar, but so Stuart and I know a ton about Evrnu and New Cycle and what you're building. And so we know about some of the brand partnerships that you've done, but we'd love you to kind of introduce to everyone who's listening, how you've worked with brands. And then we'd love to talk a little bit about what the process was like when you first launched, reaching out to brands and brand partners. Were they on board immediately? Did it take convincing? And then how have you worked with design teams and designers and tried to explain the importance of chemical recycling and just what that's been like? And we can have a conversation about that education process.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what we do custom R&D work, and it's not for every brand or retailer. Not a lot of brands and retailers have in-house R&D teams. A lot of them buy commodities from textile mills. Some of them even buy full package garments, and they will submit maybe a spec, but really depends on how the company works. We were really fortunate early on. Christo and I, my business partner, met at Target, and we had a conversation with the Levi's team. Levi's was our first early adopter. And, early on, to the brands and retailers, they just want to know that they can build products that look better, feel better, and perform better. To them, it's all about consumer engagement, because if they can't attract the consumers to their products, they have no earnings, margin, and cash flow. So on a design side, design's charged with creating new products, and then you move into very real conversations with the business teams. And business teams could care less about you're saving the world, you're trying to save the world. They're like, we don't care about water. We don't care about air. All we care about is price and delivery. How much is going to cost, and how much am I going to make, and how much am I going to spend? So 3 years ago, it was really excruciating to answer that question, because we knew we could take back their old clothes, repolymerize them, and turn them into new products, which essentially means there's like an exponential benefit economically and environmentally on the products that we're developing. But 3 years ago, the conversation around circular practices really was just in its infancy stages. So, now I can actually take brands and retailers through, okay, I'll take you by the hand. I'll tell you how much you're going to make and how much you're going to spend in the near term to speak in your language. Then I'm going to show you how we're going to take back everything that doesn't sell, and we're going to turn it into new product. Everything that does sell to your consumers, you can take that back too and turn that into new product. We're going to show you how your business goes up and your impact goes down. We're going to decouple impact from growth. And then we're going to put really sharp stories together and talk to your customer about how your business values are in congruency with your consumer values. And once the business and the consumer's values are in alignment, that is the key to earnings, margin, and cash flow. So it wasn't until this pandemic that people really started calling us saying, okay, walk me through what you're doing now, because now I have a shit ton of waste on my hands and I don't know what to do with it. If you guys have a solution, we want to hear about it. So now we're doing characterization studies for a lot of different brands and retailers. We're evaluating their products to determine how recyclable is it. if it is recyclable, who should be recycling it for them? And if it's not, we're helping them. Here's a spec on how you can make this product more recyclable so your business is resilient in the future. So, you know, this big elephant in the room is, you know, this business model is based on style obsolescence with consumption as the driver. You know, I'm not sure if the fast fashion business model just died or not, but it's pretty damn close. So rest in peace. It's now time for a regenerative model, one in which you can rebuild what you already have and create a lot more resiliency for the future.
It just took a pandemic to get us there, it seems.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, how else could you put a pause on the whole world and watch ecosystem services rebound? So all the doubters out there, it's indisputable now. You can see that air is regenerating itself. You can see water is regenerating itself. It's just incredible how nature is like bouncing back like that. It's very resilient. Our businesses have to get as resilient as nature, and that's the point.
That's really interesting. Stacey, this is something that when we spoke with Tom from TerraCycle, you and him have kind of, he touched on it, and I've heard you kind of talk about it really a little bit in the beginning of this call, but how there's sort of like value in waste. And that I think traditionally people think that when you throw something away, it goes from having some value to being totally worthless. Have you had to like have a shift in sort of talking about and educating people that waste actually does have value, and then how to like sell people on that?
Yeah, that's my day job. You know, so you know, honestly, it's tough for people to get their heads around. Like, you know, we can actually we repolymerize waste. So we break it back down to its basic building blocks. Then you can build it back up into whatever you want it to be. It can be textiles, it can be building materials. It can be, once things are down to their basic building blocks, you can build them back up into the next new useful and beautiful thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be garment to garment. But yeah, it is a mass education. And I think that's what the 20s are about. 2020s are about really seeding the fact that this is now possible. Because, you know, the generations that are younger than me, you know, they're interested in reusing, and it just seems like that's the generation that's really going to catalyze a lot of this stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I sort of see that too. It's like there's this shift from, I guess it is from the linear economy into the circular economy, but people understanding that there is like an actual back end, and that like you're not just, there is no away, like when you throw things away.
Yeah. I say that a lot. But even Excel is a linear tool. You know, we don't have the tools that allow us to capture, you know, it's, if you were going to use Excel and you were going to talk in accounting terms, you would have a use and then a long delay, and then another incarnation, a long delay, another incarnation. But it's just like a lot of the ways that we think and a lot of the systems as they exist right now are all being redesigned. So this is an incredibly inspiring and interesting time in the apparel industry, for sure.
I think globally in every industry. I mean, you look at some of the biggest financial players in the world. You know, Bloomberg about 4 years ago started putting an environmental social good platform onto their terminals, which is what these bankers and equity traders look at every day. That's where they get all of their information, are those Bloomberg terminals. So they started making that important 4 or 5 years ago, and now, you know, that combined with environmental profit and loss statements, which we could debate how or why those are useful. And then, you know, you're looking at now the big banks who are getting who are shedding customers because they are supporting things like the Dakota Access Pipeline, or they are overly indexed in fossil fuels. I think JP Morgan's kind of the last holdout, where they call it kind of dirty money. The Natural Resources Institute has done a huge study on that. That's very, very interesting. If you feel like nerding out, it's on their website. But that a lot of businesses, BlackRock, one of the largest financial institutions in the world, has said that they are moving towards sustainability, and they're investing in sustainability. So, they even created a fund that, Stacy and I both agree it's not enough. It's like 50 million, which is like, if you're BlackRock, it's literally like the lint you picked out of your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your
CEO.
Yeah, it's what you carry around in your wallet.
Exactly, but it's a fund on circularity, and it is. They have asked the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to advise them on it. So, that to me, this is all progress, and it's not perfection, and it's not mature, but it is the first steps, and we're getting there. They're positive steps.
Yeah, there's only one way to go.
I like that.
Follow up?
Yes, so I've got like one more kind of question, and then I'll turn it over to you, Chloe. Stacy, you mentioned that you're working with companies, you have a consumer facing side of the business, and then you're also working with companies to be able to hand things back to be recycled. Kind of part of our conversations that we've had internally, and then with a couple other people that we've spoken to, is that it's a pretty complicated process, and like it has to be super simple for customers. So it's like, hey, send it back in the mail, or like drop it off where you're normally used to dropping stuff off. But it becomes a pretty complicated supply chain. Where does sort of Evrnu slot in that process? And then what other sort of recycling partners are you guys working with? Are there other traditional recyclers that you're working with in conjunction that are helping like maybe mechanically recycle some of it? And then it kind of comes back. Like, what does that sort of look like? And then are there other players that you're working with well to help like tracking, to help with like cataloging? Kind of a multi-part question, but kind of curious how your team's doing.
Yeah. So very, very complicated system. Evrnu is an R&D company. I should make that really clear. We don't own the ability to produce. We do rapid prototyping. So we've got the ability to make like 20, 30, 40 pieces of a garment or fabric for a garment. We're technology owners. So we own the IP to take waste and repolymerize it into new fibers. And our model is that we will license our technologies to global producers who have the ability to produce and scale. One of the things that Christo and I had to decide early on was, what are we? Are we proposing to become a textile mill and sell fiber by the pound? But we knew that these players are huge. They would take us out almost instantly if we tried that. So we decided that we were going to be an R&D company and add value to help the supply chain modernize. So that's really what our focal point is. But in terms of like starting with waste, sorting, separating, and grading waste right now is all done by hand, manually, with humans, which means you can do about a ton a day at a facility. So, and not only that, but a lot of the labels that say that the fiber content is correct are actually incorrect. So when you're doing chemical recycling or repolymerization, you need to know your exact fiber blend ratios, or you're going to overdose or underdose your chemistry, and either way you end up with nothing. So the first thing we had to do was we had to figure out how to automate, sort, separate, and grading of textiles so that we could get a really good understanding of what the fiber content was. So we're training waste owners to do that. And then what we do is license our technology to paper pulping mills. Instead of them buying trees and making pulp out of trees, we're training them to make pulp out of clothing waste. And then from there, that pulp is sent to global fiber producers that make fiber from wood pulp. And we're helping those fiber producers make better fiber from cotton waste than they could from a tree. And in some cases, the fibers are, strength profiles are north of nylon, which means that a cellulose natural fiber can now compete in performance arenas that they wouldn't have or haven't been able to in the past. And then, all of our technologies are designed to be disassembled in the future. So, making sure that that translates to the brand retailer. The brand retailer gets you know, that new cycle messaging on the garment. So when the product goes to consumers, consumers know what they're getting and what they're supporting. And when they donate it, they should have a high degree of confidence that it'll be recycled and repolymerized again.
Love that. Love that there's and I think it's really a big need that you have to have that sort of stamp of approval with this new cycle, that it's like, it's actually going to be done. It's not just going to be recaptured and tossed to landfill, or recaptured and incinerated.
And then there's a huge tech component too, which we haven't even really started working on, but we are looking at blockchain chain of custody data. Like, how do you track a polymer in the first incarnation? And how do you check that polymer back in and then redeploy it into its second incarnation? So we can start to really understand how we're managing our resources and what the real impact reduction is. It's a big job, no doubt.
Very cool.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know a lot about tracking on the back end, we're planning to have a call to discuss things like RFID, blockchain, sometime next week. So be on the lookout. But it's super interesting. How do you track and make sure that your fiber material has actually been properly recycled after it's left the hands of the initial manufacturer? And how do you understand the material content? But really quickly, I would love to get into kind of where you guys see the future of sustainability in retail, sustainability of textiles, and communication post-COVID-19. We've touched on it briefly, and then we'll open it up for questions. But I mean, we've talked about how big of an event, like a macro event, COVID-19 has been. First and foremost, where do we see the industry really shifting after this? Is it a focus on waste and risk with waste? Is it a way that we're going to be talking to consumers and really putting values first? And then specifically for sustainable brands and sustainable fashion, we've been struggling with, we talked about it earlier, Carrie, but with the word sustainability for quite some time. And so just how do you cut through the noise as a sustainable brand? And is there another way to talk about sustainability in the future?
Okay, those are a lot of questions, but I'm gonna take the last one you did, because I think there's a kind of a simple, we can look at the world of food. The word natural was around for a long time, and it kind of meant health food, hippie food, right? And then the big players kind of got involved, and like Nabisco and whatever, like I have a picture somewhere and I can't find it, but they used to have something called natural Cheetos. Like, there's nothing natural about a Cheeto. Like, there's nothing natural about it. There's absolutely nothing. Like, from the process to the, like, but there's no cheese in it. Like, there's nothing natural about a Cheeto. But then the organic movement was, I compare the organic movement to the circular economy movement, right? Organic means something. It stands for something. There's a set of agreed upon rules where you get to stamp your thing organic because it met all of these criteria.
Right.
I think from a circular economy perspective, it's the same thing. You can say, was this made from something that used to be something else? Can I, when I am done with it, take it and send it to be turned into something else? Obviously, it can be a little bit more in depth, but like for a consumer, that's pretty easy to understand. Right. It means I don't throw it away. If I see the recycling, it's the same way to, like, you know, you get somebody to recycle a plastic water bottle. So I would say, if we look at the food movement, I would say natural versus organic, but natural somehow still feels good to us in the way that sustainability still feels good to us. And it's almost like a gateway word, right? So like, and sustainability, I would say, is still a gateway word. And it's an important one because your consumer still doesn't know. You and I have talked about this a lot, Chloe and Stuart, like your customer still doesn't know to ask for circular, right? They're not saying like, give me some circular sneakers. But if you say that if they type in sustainable sneaker and you come up, your opportunity on your website, in your channels, on your Instagram, wherever, is to educate them like a friend would about what sustainability means when they are choosing Thousand Foe. And Chloe, now I can't remember what your other questions were.
It was about kind of the future of sustainability post-COVID-19 and sustainable messaging. and how we think brands are going to lean into value or not lean into value, or if some of the biggest impact of this really is waste. We wanted to kind of talk about like the shift we think we'll see over the next 18 months.
Well, I will say one thing and throw it to Flynn, because this is where her world is about to explode. But I think the people who were kind of left holding the most inventory that they invested in and will never sell are going to be the people who are going to be the companies that are either not around anymore or are so absolutely crippled that they realize that they put so much value into something that they don't have a way to get any value back out of it. And so I think that these principles of circular economy are going to become more important. I think the idea of less waste is going to become important, and the idea of what you do with your waste is going to become really important. Our CFO, we had a call with him the other day, as I'm sure anybody who's an entrepreneur has had 65 conversations with their CFO
daily
over the last month. And daily, I mean, and he said something that really spoke to me, because I think it's very universal. You know, we are in a situation, like never in history has there been a situation in modern history like this, where everything is completely decimated.
Right.
And you get to come back, but you actually get to make a choice as to how you come back. Like you get this, it's an actual, like COVID-19, if we have to find something positive about it, we have to find the ways in which we use it as a giant reset button. For the way we think about our companies, the way we think about consuming, the way we think about the planet, the way we think about our relationship to it and each other. And that's really powerful. And he said that to us about 3 weeks ago, and it's really stuck with me that this is this gigantic opportunity. And if you looked back, 10 years from now and you're like, I didn't take that opportunity to really think about it and totally reset, you would feel foolish, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well said, because that's exactly right. I think that the brands and retailers right now are just trying to figure out how are they going to stay alive in the face of COVID, I think we remain really sympathetic to that issue. Right now we've got a lot of canceled inventory out there, and we've got to figure out what to do with it right now. The standard practice would have to be incinerated or landfilled, because this is a business. Look, this is a $4 trillion base but in order
to get their write-offs, it would have to be incinerated.
Yeah, exactly. So if they didn't write off,
can you clarify that?
Yes, I'll clarify that.
They can't get write off, they don't burn the clothing.
Yeah, so correct. Yep, they cannot donate the clothing. They have to incinerate it and show affidavit of destruction in order to write off the cost. It's a gap accounting rule, and it essentially.
Is this only in the U.S.?
No, it's
nope.
Yeah. So essentially, like, this is a big business. I mean, and that's one of the hardest parts to change is you've got this massive industry. Sorry, guys. You've got this massive industry built on a house of cards. The house of cards just fell 3 weeks ago, and now everybody's trying to just figure out what does the new reality look like. But the big elephant in the room is that these brands and retailers, they don't know what's going to sell well and what's not going to sell well. So when they plan to buy a certain percent to sell at full margin, where they get paid full retail. Then they plan a certain percent to be marked down, and then they liquidate the rest. Well, they can't get into what sells well fast enough, and they can't get out of what doesn't sell well fast enough, so they're just chasing markdown dollars. In order to write off the cost of the products that don't sell, they have to show affidavit of destruction, because if they don't do that, if they sell below cost, they cannibalize next year's business. And they can't do that because they're comped based on same store sales this time last year. So that's the big problem. And that's why we developed our technologies, because we just saw all of our friends, thousands of people chasing markdown dollars, knowing that this wasn't sustainable. This model isn't sustainable.
So I do feel like at this point, there's only one way to go, and that's really building more resiliency in the model so that we can continue to keep what we love about the apparel industry, which is access to newness, self-expression, but it's done in a really different way.
That's really well said.
I think that will come through an immediate shift in merchandising and a markdown to full price strategy kind of adjustment, or do you think that that's a more far off wish? Does that make sense? Like next year, Gap Summer 2021, will that already be adjusted to be less of a reliance on markdown product and more of a reliance on basics that are less seasonal? Is that the hope?
I'm could you guys hear me that whole time? I'm sorry. I had a
We could hear you, but a little less clear.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a headphone malfunction.
Switch to analog. Love it.
So I am not sure what the future looks like for the brands and retailers. I think they're just trying to figure out what the new norm is going to be once the world turns back on. But for sure, consumers right now are at home with their families, with their friends. They're realizing their lives are kind of passing them by. Maybe I'm speaking from my own personal experience, and we're all sitting here thinking about what's really important. And let me tell you, buying clothes is not the most important thing when you're faced with a pandemic and you've got people who are sick and dying around you. So I think it's time to put things in perspective and get back to what's important: connection with each other, not access to more shit.
Right. Well, I think just kind of to wrap up those, you can see Stuart grabbing a computer charger. To wrap up those 2 points, that it's super similar to what we saw a couple of years ago. We were both at bigger retail companies and watching markdowns be taken on seasonal colors even. So you're replacing your summer red for your fall red. And that there's a really tough balance right now at these major retailers because of exactly what you said, comping year over year sales to continue to replace and push newness. And then now this new challenge of comping markdown dollars. So I think what we've really focused on at Thousandfoot also is like designing into products that never go to markdown so that we really can get into a closed loop system. But right now, I mean, we have like a couple of other questions, but I'd love to open it up to anybody in the audience who has a question for Carrie or Stacy.
Yeah, and to make this civil, if you want to just raise your hand, I think that's a function on here. You just click raise hand. I'll unmute you, and then you can ask.
We're all learning.
All right, Marie. Hold on.
You said yes?
All right, Marie, go for it.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. I'm off mute, right? Am I off mute?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me.
Yeah.
So I walk at least 2 hours a day during this time. I should look like Giselle, still not there, and I've come up with like all I do is talk out loud all the time, questions about what I think is going to happen. And we've been speaking tonight about things like the Gap. Who knows if the Gap is even going to make it? And then you've got the CFDA who's struggling to save every designer that was maybe not even intended to survive. So a few things that I've been thinking about was about on the money side, I don't think things are going to be as expensive anymore because I think value will have changed. But I also think things like collections don't make sense anymore. We never needed that much clothes. They never needed to keep sending all these things. I've worked for designers for years that have shown things on runway, nothing was ever created. It was all make-believe. And I think it's all like that door is being pushed back. So when I was writing some notes here, I really think that the end of the collections, less expensive, designers that do, maybe they're not intended to be at this level with retail. If Neiman Marcus is in trouble, if all these other retailers are in trouble, maybe there's a market with the insurgence of craft that they're making one-offs for people. There still will be a lot of people with a lot of money that will want things that are made especially for them. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here to kind of really, there's the Gap side, which of course is a lot of people, me, I mean, that's me, I love the Gap. But on the other side, I know they do some bad things, but they still work for me. But on the other side, I think that there are going to be some big changes. So I was talking to a friend about all these companies becoming sustainable going forward. And we came to the conclusion, like, will it be a Sophie's choice? Will it be doing things sustainably that are going to set them back on time and money? Or are they going to move forward with and so that they can get employees back and start to make some money? I think there's going to be a lot of Sophie's choicing going on at the same time. So those are just kind of some of the things that have been like rattling on in my brain about where this is, because there's a lot of articles, people talking, and no one's saying anything specific. Like,
Yeah.
come up with some things, and who's going to lead? Carrie, go lead this.
Yeah,
Stacey,
Carrie,
go
they
in
need
there,
you.
because
Carrie, you do it.
like we're coming back to this normal, and there is no normal, and I don't know if people know how to come back, and
Yeah.
it's a mess, and I don't know what's really. These are just kind of some of the ideas. Are you on board with any of them? Do they make sense to you? Because we kind of went from like gap to all the way to circular economy, and there's a lot in between, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think the brands are really trying to just figure out what's going on internally. You know, talking to my friends at the brands and retailers on Friday nights, Saturday nights over wine, you know, everybody's just trying to figure out how are they going to handle this. And, you know, if I were still working for a large brand or retailer, you know, your supply chain is paramount. If you decide to stick your supply chain, or you leave your supply chain holding the bag for the products that you created, they will never work with you again, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're definitely out of business. So we see brands that are saying, sorry, not my problem. And those are brands, like, the writing's on the wall with them. And there are a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
But the ones that are saying, nope, we're in this with them and we're going to figure it out, those are the ones that I think are going to stick around. But, you know, for example, like, they're getting really innovative. Like, if they have position on fabrics, they're requiring their design teams to design into those fabrics. In the past, designers may have chosen whatever they wanted. They're not going to have that luxury if the supply chain owns resources. So it's going to be interesting, Marie. I think lots of things to consider, and no one's come out with any real strong statements, because I don't think they know yet.
I think there's a lot of not knowing. I think there's a lot of fear. But Marie, one of the things you said was interesting in terms of the Sophie's choice of, you know, do we just get started again, or do we invest in sustainability because it's so much more expensive? I think what's interesting is that was the case, I'm going to say 4 years ago. Now, as this comes more to the forefront, sustainability solutions, I mean, I think I invite anybody to get back on another call with Stacy Flynn and have her walk you through the news cycle model. Because actually what a lot of these sustainable practices have done is figure out ways to make this work for the brand and for the vendor, so that you are actually making more money, putting out fewer resources. And it's just what you have to invest in is mindset. And so for people who are in Stacy's position or my position, it's about educating those brands and making them understand that there's actually the resources required are a lot lower than you might think they are, and the long-term return on investment is actually far greater.
Yeah.
We're
And also
already a
kind of
month in, and it sounds like people have got to start figuring some things out that have some logic. You can't wait until all of a sudden we're open for Memorial Day weekend and then just try to get your act together. I think that there have to be those steps, so you guys must never go to bed in the education cycle. And the other thing I wanted to mention that is, I think masks are a great opportunity to educate the consumer if they're done right. And that could be like the real foundation of, this is what it means. The mayor in our little town had to come on a recording to say, hey, great that you're wearing masks, but our cleanup crews have to pick them up out of the street because you're disposing of them irresponsibly. And again, it was another cycle of mess. Like, this could be better. In this little town, we don't need to have that happen. People are smarter than that. So I think there could be a tremendous amount of education from kids who are 2 years old to 200 years old, start them now, and they'll have a new idea of this is the way things should be done. This is a better way. This is what it means. But we had to move so fast again that I don't know if enough people and companies were able to kind of grasp what the best way is. What do you think the solution is for masks? What's the most sustainable way? Is it the
New cycle it.
New cycle? Are you making new cycle masks, Stacy, Flynn?
Yes, of course I am.
Go, Stacy. Where can we buy them?
Well, TBD.
TBD. There's Bunk. Bunk wants to buy a Stacy mask, or do you want to talk, Bunk? You have to unmute. Oh, here she goes. Here goes Bunk. Bunk has a new cat.
Aww.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. There's Bunk.
Bunk, I just unmuted you. Marie, thank you. And that was really helpful, like kickoff. And so it seems like we're going to get a lot of patchwork in the new designs that are coming out. So new trend called by Stacy, and then Carrie, you're absolutely right. Sustainability is getting to the point where it is affordable. So being able to,
I mean, you guys couldn't have created Thousandfell 4 years ago. There's no possible way.
Yeah.
No, those sneakers would have been $300 4 years
ago.
ago.
And that's what we talked to a lot of people about. It's like we went out and researched it, and it was like for us to be able to do it at under 100 was so important. And be able to kind of stand on the shoulder of giants of a couple of these textile vendors that have like spent a lot of time getting it to scale. Sorry, Buck, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it.
No, it was just, Marie was saying about masks, and personally, I've been seeing a lot of, it's coming up on my Instagram a lot of marketing messaging on masks. Masks are becoming the next message t-shirt.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I haven't thought about that, but like
it's off the sustainability conversation, but it's very interesting as far as getting a message out, because there's a ton of messaging masks out there now.
Yeah. On medical waste, Stuart and I did a couple-day deep dive into medical waste 2 weeks ago because we decided maybe we could help put masks into the circular economy in some way. But it's really complicated, Marie, because any medical, PPE that comes from a hospital has to go to an incinerator.
Yeah.
Because of potential for infection. And then if like a used mask, you could make it reusable, but only again for that same person again because of the chance of infection. So I think the answer we got to was if you could make masks that were still as effective out of recycled materials, which hopefully NewCell is doing.
But maybe the education can start until that can happen. I know that it could not be from PPE, but if it was that the most educating consumers today on the most responsible choice in masks they could make today would begin the foundation, and not necessarily it's even recycled, but is it the one that is washable, and what are the materials? And it's just an opportunity because everyone, like in Japan, everyone has a washcloth, everyone has a hand towel, everyone will have a mask going forward.
Oh, I hope not.
I think that might be a bit of a I'd fly with one from here on out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No doubt. I would not wear a mask.
A good platform for sure.
So we'll see.
Does anyone else have a question for Carrie or Stacy about circular fashion, sustainability, the future of communications, their career path? Rodrigo.
Okay.
You guys can also type a question in the chat. Stu, can you unmute people?
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can.
I see people actually
actively raising their hand. I know.
There's actually a function called raise my hand.
Okay, I see one. I see one with Wolfgang. I'm going to unmute him really quickly.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you. That was really fascinating. I really appreciate that. My question, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'm just going to shoot with one. In terms of authenticity of a brand saying they're using sustainable practices, how do you actually prove that? Because there's so much, as you surely are aware, so much fake news out there. So how do you know a brand is really using sustainable practices, and how do you verify that?
So it's a really great question, Wolfgang. I'm so glad you asked, because it's a place in the industry where we're still very immature. there are not a lot of, there are some marks that you can apply for. Some of them are expensive, some of them are not. Some of them mean something, some of them don't mean much. I think, you know, what I would, I've worked with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for a few years, and I've urged them, and I wished that they would create a circular economy mark, but it doesn't sound like they will. But there should, we are going to need that. It has to be coming, because we are in a place where now everybody knows they have to do it. And I think what you're getting at is people are going to half do it, or they're going to sort of do it, or they're going to look to the outside world like they're doing it and not really doing it. The place where it is more mature, because it's been around for longer, is in the labor practices. So fair trade, which everybody knows the best, the Fair Labor Association, which I think probably for Western standards probably doesn't go far enough, but when you're talking about third world and developing nations, those targets are much better than the standard. So we've got a couple of things in that sense, but I do think I think that we do need more, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of I ran certification for DuPont in North America, and I kind of feel like certification in a lot of ways is a racket, because even with certification, it can be a bit subjective and it's expensive. And if people are doing it for free, that's great. But once you charge for it, that's where I feel like it gets to be a little bit tough. For us, we are responsible for our brand, therefore we're setting the standard, and it exceeds every known standard out there. And if we can make it better, we will, and we will make it better over time. So I feel like a lot of, you know, the first rule of thumb is, you know, how do you treat people, and how are you authentically and honestly moving the needle forward for people? This is no longer a marketing gimmick. We're moving into the realm of legitimate tech with real impact, and, you know, drawing down, Carrie and I talk about this all the time. Like, we want to draw down meta levels of impact to global natural resources. And, you know, we've got about 20 years to get that done. And, you know, either you're doing it or you're not.
That was awesome. Wolfgang, thank you for your question. I'm going to pull some from the chat. Clearly my skills as a moderator need some work. Carrie, this is going to go to you. Simon sent this through. He said, what do you envision successfully marketing and communications will look like in a post COVID-19 world, with the reality of like a widening economic divide? Is luxury even relevant in the new world? Does luxury need to cater to a wider market by producing more affordable goods? And then Stacey, there's a question for you, but we'll tackle that one first.
So I think with the question of luxury, I think there are always going to be people who can afford beautiful things. And there's always going to be people who can't. And I think that is but I think, so that's been the traditional definition of luxury, is things that are well made and usually priced higher than others. I think our definition of luxury is probably going to change, as it has been evolving, I would say, over the last 10 years. And I think people are starting to view luxuries as not just that incredible purse that everybody has, and that's like the it bag, and now this is my status and this is my symbol, and this tells you who I am. I think it's more about luxury has become more personal for people. And so I think things like, you know, a friend of mine, I was talking to her about, like, what are the things that you grabbed before you left New York City? And she said, well, my clothes and things. She said, I have this little incense burner, and I love it because I light it every night, and it's part of my ritual, and it's this beautiful thing, and I spent some money on it, but, like, you know, it means something to me. So I think for her, like, that was her luxury that she grabbed before she left New York City. But I think I think luxury is going to become more useful to people. more special. And I also think that the communications paradigm in a post-COVID world is going to be about authenticity. I mean, it feels so tone deaf right now to see people like taking selfies in like their latest outfit. And, there is so much that starts to, that speaks to the sort of vapidity of that, of selfie culture and fast fashion. And fast fashion and selfie culture have sort of fed each other for a long time. And so I think you're seeing the breakdown of both of those things. So I think that's going to continue to sort of, I think authenticity is going to be it. You have to connect.
Yeah, I think so too. Carrie, thank you. And Stacy, to you, Simon's question is this a big opportunity for sustainable businesses like Evrnu? Is this it? And can sustainably made products become more affordable in the near future?
Yeah, this is it. This is definitely go time for, people who have technologies, innovations in many different aspects. One of the things that we've been watching, since I started my career over 20 years ago, we pay less today for a t-shirt than we did 20 years ago. I do not think, and, I can really see it coming a mile away when someone tries to beat me up on price right out of the gate. Cheap product is not what sells. Cheap product is not why people buy. People buy because they either have a need or they like the way it looks or feels or makes them feel. When you look at the hierarchy of needs from a consumer, price is, fourth or fifth on the list. Does it fit? Does it look good? Does it make me look good? And then we start getting into what's the price. I love the example of, back in the 90s when Adriano Goldschmied made every woman's butt look good in, diesel jeans. We went overnight, literally, from buying Gap jeans for $59.50 to buying diesel jeans for $98. And the alternative was no longer even an option. And that's how quickly the fashion industry changes if consumers really resonate with product. And I think that's what it's going to take in order for, these innovations to really take off. They've got to be cool. They've got to be relevant. They've got to outperform, and they've got to have value to the consumer. Laws of supply and demand are clear and finite. Volume drops price. Once volume goes up, price goes down, but it doesn't start that way. So it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, making sure that the brands are retailing at the highest possible retail to set perception, because you can always bring price down, but you will never bring perception up if you start out of the gate at cheap and deep. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was well said. Very poetic. All right, I'm gonna keep churning straight down through this. Stacy, this is also for you. Does it make a difference if companies in fashion are vertically integrated or if they're dependent on outside production? And who is sort of the bigger chance of doing better in the years to come? Do you think that vertical integration is a
It depends on the country. Vertical integration makes sense in some countries, and in other countries, it's literally a cousin down the street, or, the supply chain is very close. We should just say that. And whether they're vertical or not vertical, if they're in business, they've got, contacts, preferred people they work with. And so I say, it comes down to, is the supply chain able to fulfill the needs of the brands and retailers, and is everybody across the supply chain being valued? Right now I have lots of opinions. I think I'll save them for this group, but there's only one way you can get cheap clothing, and not paying people what they're worth is something that needs to, die with this virus.
Well said.
Stacy, kind of continuing with you, how is Evrnu enabling innovators within larger companies or corporations to prototype and experiment with your technologies? This is from Rodrigo, who we've had on to talk about material innovation a bit. Have you ever?
Hey, Rodrigo.
Here, we can unmute you too if you want. Have you ever considered partnering with organizations on like an incubator model to help bring your technology to the masses with smaller risk and supply chain commitments?
Yeah, we are working with brands and retailers, and it comes down to the people always. It doesn't really even matter the size of the organization. If someone wants to use their energy and they're able to influence their companies to make the right decisions, that's really how we make some headway here. So we are and will always be available. My business partner, Christo, is one of the most gifted textile engineers in the industry. And he does a lot of work to help guide, shape pretty much anybody who calls. So, and I do the same thing. So we're here to help. We know that this is a big job, and we've got to build capacity in each other in order to take it on.
Have you guys, since we've tried working together many times before, obviously, I know we're
going to make it work.
We're going to make it work. 5 years ago when we started talking, it was very difficult to kind of get these companies to wrap their heads around what we're talking about now. And moving forward, I think it's a lot easier to push this agenda, but when you're within a larger company, a lot of the times, as an innovator or let's say someone that's trying to push the sustainability up front, it's very difficult to convince the political movers in the company. At the end of the day, even though you've got this amazing plan, you've got the partners on board to get it, moving forward, it always kind of gets locked up in the supply chain. So
Yep.
Given a lot of the scenarios, I'm sure a lot of other companies work differently, but when you're dealing with huge complex supply chains, have you guys thought of any other, business models that allow you to kind of introduce the material or technology at such a large scale?
Yeah, that's why we created localized rapid prototyping, because we realized that a lot of the big mills don't even have the ability to prototype. Like their smallest size would be 1 ton. And if you prototype 1 ton of fiber to get to a sample, you've got to run 50 of those 1 ton tests. Exactly. That's really expensive to get to a new standard. I could do the same thing in about 3 weeks with our pilot line. So to them, we offer a major value add because they don't have the equipment to do what we can do quickly. But the topic of trying to influence people within organizations is really probably the biggest nut to crack. And, we're really up against the status quo where, people are brought up thinking that there's only one way of doing something. And it really comes down to leadership and how strong are the leaders? Are they willing to make investments in their teams and really take a chance on things that maybe they can't see the benefit, but unless the leadership is willing to take a risk and a chance, we're not going to see much movement.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. Rodrigo, that was a great question. Switching over to a question again, Stacy, from Madeline, it's how do you feel about biodegradability in bio-based products? Are they circular? If not, how do you rate the sustainability value of biodegradability versus another solution such as recycling?
So biodegradability, we could talk about we got to fix dyeing and finishing, because if you're using polymetallics, if you're coloring anything, it's got a polymetallic in it. That means you've got a polyester and a metal. Those are not necessarily biodegradable, or you don't want them to be in your system in an uncontrolled way. We have not designed garments for the end in mind, really. If we were going to be starting to design for the end in mind, the entire chemical makeup of how we make clothing would be fundamentally different. And that's what we've got to tackle over the next 20 years. So I do think certain things are biodegradable, but what's on top of it, what's on top of that, what's on top of that, those are all of the questions that need to be asked.
I'm going to jump in here too. This was a point that we talked to Tom Zaki about at length, both with biodegradability and compostability. In that just because something can be composted doesn't mean that it necessarily yields like usable material. And then he also talked about what he called well-maintained landfills, and how a lot of stuff that goes to landfill that is technically biodegradable is in these super densely packed landfills to the point where they can't break down. So you have, God, what did he say? I think he said it was like a
banana peel.
Yes, and it
Oh yeah,
was like,
700
a
years.
trash
Yeah.
archaeologist or something, like
Yeah.
landfill archaeologist.
Yeah.
That went in, it was like a 90-year-old banana peel,
Uh-huh.
which is crazy.
So that's kind of one of the problems that we've seen as we've been going through the product development process with, like, do we recapture the shoes and break them down, or do we hope that they're biodegradable from home? And it's even sending anything to landfill at this point doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to break down, even if it could in the right condition.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and I think the compostability as well. I mean, you know, also to Stacy's point, do we want our fabric to biodegrade? Like, you know, we should be putting it back into the system. And one of the things about compostability that we can all talk about is like, great, these things are compostable, but not in my backyard. I can't go throw them on my compost pile. You need industrial composting. You need the energy usage. My cows do not eat your compostable chopsticks. And so, you know, there's an inherent issue there where, you know, there's these innovations, which, okay, that's great that we've innovated to have something that is compostable, but, you know, our back end needs to catch up. And anybody who's in the circular economy knows what that's all about, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of the last ones in the chat, and then we've been here for almost 90 minutes, so I'll let you guys go and enjoy your night and be with your families. Stacy, do you envision governments incentivizing sustainable practices? I think this was something that we asked Tom as well. Is what and if so, like, what role does government play in it?
I love this question because government has no role to play. Because if we waited for government, we'd be waiting a really long time. So I really think it's the entrepreneurs and the businesses that have to take, you know, and I say this with a grain of salt. I happen to not have the patience for government, but certainly there are people who do have the patience for government. Those are the people that I need to collaborate with to get different things adjusted. For example, if we're taking US waste and we're turning it into pulp and we export it overseas, fiber garments are made overseas. When you import that garment back into the United States and you're mixing it with other fibers, is it considered chief value cotton or is it considered chief value synthetic? Now, if it were Evrnu or New Cycle Rich, it would be considered it would be chief value synthetic, which means that your duty rate is significantly higher than if it were chief value cotton. Is that right? I don't think so. Not if we're processing waste at a local level, creating US jobs, exporting it to be made overseas and importing it at a higher duty rate. That doesn't make any sense. So I do think that, you know, we will have to get government involved at some point, but I'm hoping that, you know, someone who's got a lot more patience than I can take that on.
Carrie.
Well, I will say, I'm involved in 2 different tariff relief projects and a reporting, a corporate reporting. It's an initiative, I'm going to say, because it's not even far enough along to be taken to a senator to be a bill, but we've got a couple of those different things. I just got involved in a plastics recycling governmental group as well, just because I think someone from our side needs to be, and there's not enough people from our side who are there, and I find puzzles fascinating. So yeah, there is work being done. Again, Stacy's right. We're all going to be there before they are, right?
Now, Carrie, when you're ready to present to a senator, I have a good friend who's a senator in Washington State. I would trust her to move on some of these things when you're ready.
Anybody else on here know a senator? Because I'm a taker. You got a senator, I'm a taker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Follow-up question to that, Stacy, the point you mentioned earlier that blew my mind, that right now brands are incentivized by the tax code to burn waste rather than donate. What can we do to fix that? Are there have you seen any petitions going around? Is there anything like that we can quickly jump to fix that problem created by
You're,
the COVID slowdown?
you're talking about their business model. So I would say good luck with adjusting their business model. Right now they may feel differently, but that a lot of people on the brand retail level complain about this, but it's the model. It's how the model's designed. And it's a big deal because it also goes down to shareholder value. U.S. corporations are legally required to maximize shareholder value. And, when it comes right down to it, their shareholders a lot of times could care less if the brand or retailer is trying to save the world. They want their money. And, so there's a lot of things that need to be unpacked here. And, when you start unpeeling it, it gets pretty dark. And, we were able to set up our company as a social purpose corp. So, I could never be sued by my shareholders for not maximizing shareholder profit if I'm doing damage to people or the environment.
Mm.
One of the things I will say just on this point is that if we look at Burberry and what happened when Burberry was exposed for incinerating pre-consumer garment waste.
Right.
And the huge backlash that came to them, and the amount, what's crazy is that it's the dirty secret of the luxury industry, right? Everybody does it. There's nobody who doesn't do it. And in like little conversations and quiet conversations, everybody will admit it, and everybody will say, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? We know we can't do this anymore. We know we have to stop this practice.
Right.
So, when I'm talking to consumer, because it's very difficult to get to the right people to talk to at a brand to say, like, you got to stop doing this, because to Stacy's point, they're like, this is built into our business model. Like, until we figure out another way to make money that we would be losing because we're not doing this, we're not going to stop. So the only way to do it is the power of the consumer.
Yeah.
Is to ask consumers to, like, I was speaking at a school, and I asked everybody at the school to get out their cell phones in the middle of my talk. And I said, we talked about this issue, and I said, go on to your Instagram to a brand that you love and say, hey, I hear you burn clothing. And I said, because I promise they all do. That's terrible. What are your plans for not doing that anymore? I am your customer. And, so, but that is the power of the consumer. My business partners and I, we get, like, when we're having meetings with the marketing companies or the marketing divisions of companies, they talk about the sentiments they're seeing on things like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and they're scared of it.
The other thing too is, if you have a real dog on your hands and you have 4 40-foot containers of something that nobody wanted to buy anyway, like even if you were to give it away, people probably still wouldn't want it. So there's a lot of that in the supply chain as well.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's a mix of more thoughtful design, so we don't end up with that container load of a dog product, and consumer-led initiative. Yeah,
those two things in combination are really, in order to think about thoughtful design, and, we really got to have the business side backed up to support it with a agile supply chain fulfillment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Guys, we could continue this conversation forever. This has been amazing. Thank you both to Stacy and to Carrie for coming on and leading us through this. This was super insightful. And Carrie, I watched the evolution from sun to
sunset to candlelight, guys.
Very cool. Love it.
Like, I'm not kidding. I'm
metamorphosis. Guys, thank you. What I'm going to do really as well, just to kind of let everybody know, is we're building a landing page to host all of this. So we'll put it up so that people can listen and you can redirect it and share it. I think the number one DM that we've gotten speaking to social listening is like, hey, where can I missed the live talk. Where can I watch it? So we'll send that out to everybody too, just so that you guys can share it and pass it along.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Chloe and
having
Stuart, for
us.
doing this.
Of course.
You guys are
you.
so
Everyone
awesome.
Here. We have a talk Wednesday night about the future of sustainable supply chains. So we're talking to Ojai Shipping, the founder of Ojai Shipping, who's taking on Amazon and piloting micro warehouses, and the CFO of Happy Returns, who's dealing with a big problem we have right now with online shopping, is how do we handle returns and how do we cut down on waste and the environmental impact of returns.
Amazing.
Join us Wednesday. And
Awesome.
we're working on becoming better moderators. Every time.
You guys are
doing
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so
All
much.
right. Talk to you
Okay,
soon.
take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.